She in her mood. She lit. Your money too. Like damn, she in her mood. In the mirror, I'm doing my dance. Ain't packing out nobody's pants.
Hey y'all, so welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show y'all how I fully construct the wig. I'm just showing y'all here how after I bleach the knots, everything is giving very much scalp. So after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and go in and just get the closure tacked down. And what I do to make sure that the closure is centered, it's aligned right like in the middle of the canvas head. I just make sure I put the middle of the closure. To find the middle of the closure, you can fold the closure in half, and you can take some scissors and cut exactly where it's half at, just to be sure. But I've been doing it long enough to where I don't have to do that. But I just line it up, make sure it's even at the front, and get it tacked down. And then I'm just going to go through and take it down at the back and make sure that everything is flat. After I take it down, it's giving very much flat. This is exactly how you want your closure to look when you're taking it down. If you have any lumps or bumps, please just start over, pull it out, and make sure that the closure is seamless. Like right here, like that's flat. That's not flat. I'm gonna go back in just a minute. Y'all gonna see and readjust the closure on this side to make sure it's flush. Okay, so I went in and fixed the other side of the closure to make sure it was flat, and it's how it's looking. Very flat, just showing y'all. So now I'm about to go in and secure the closure down. I use nylon thread, and I don't have a specific way that I sew it down. I just sew it into the cap and then sew into the very edge of the closure. That's it. I don't do the lock stitch method or anything like that. I just sew. So whenever I sew my closures down, I always sew down one side, and then I come to the back and stop in the middle part. Then I go to the other side and then just finish sewing all the way around. I don't like to sew the closure start to finish all the way front to back, just because you may can get some buckles if once you like come from the back to start working on the other side. I feel like it'll create some lumps, and I know this because trial and error. I used to sew my closures down like starting from the beginning all the way to the other side without stopping. But again, I noticed that it can be buckles, bumps, humps, and it's just not gonna lay flat. So just sew one side and then go to the middle in the back, cut it off, and then start sewing on the other side, and then just meet the thread up at the back and secure it that way. So right here is where I'm gonna stop sewing, and then I'm gonna start at the other side and sew all the way to where it meets that part, overlap it, and then secure it down. Okay, so we're going to finish up sewing the closure down, and now we're going to go in and mark our guidelines. Our guidelines is just lines that we need to see where we need to put the wefts when we sewing it down on the sewing machine. So typically I spread out the wefts or the guidelines maybe 1 to 1.5 inches apart, but it really just depends. Typically, if I use 3 bundles, I know that I'm probably going to do about maybe 8 to 9 lines on every single unit, pretty much. So, like I said, I've been doing it for some time, and I kind of know like what's needed. So, I'm gonna go in. I think I did 8 guidelines, and the wig is still going to be given. It's still going to be extremely full. 8 lines doesn't mean anything because we're going to go in with the 3 bundles, and then we're going to double those 3 bundles, and we're going to fit every single piece of 20-inch bundle in here, and it's going to be extremely full. So here are the guidelines finished. I'm just showing y'all the 3 curly bundles that I'm going to be using to create this unit. Very, very full. I thought I had a clip of me sewing the wig tags down onto the caps, but I guess I didn't catch it all. But this is me threading my machine, my Singer heavy duty machine. I've had it for a while and I love it. This is the best machine ever. Now I'm going in doubling the wefts. A tip that I say when you double your wefts is to make sure that they are right underneath each other. Do not stack the wefts on top of each other and sew it down. Why? Because it's going to make it bulky and it's going to be kind of hard to sew that thick weft onto the cap. So just make sure that the weft is stacked underneath, so that way it's going to be very flat, and then when you go in to make the wig, it's not going to be any issues of any bunching or the needle breaking because the wefts are too thick. I doubled the other 2 wefts off camera. I just wanted to show y'all how I do that. So now I'm going to go in. Whenever I start my wefting or sewing, I always go in and backstitch like 2 to 3 times just to make sure that that weft is on there and not coming off. I just go through and make the wig. I'm just making sure the wefts are matched up to the guideline. And once I get to the end, I'm going to cut the weft, of course, and then I'm going to back stitch maybe 3 to 4 times as well, just to make sure that that weft is stuck on there. So when I start the wig, I back stitch 2 to 3 times, and when I end the weft and cut the weft, I back stitch 2 to 3 to 4 times. So if you decide to start making your units on a sewing machine, always backstitch at least 3 to 4 times at the beginning when you start sewing, and at the end when you finish, just to secure and make sure that them wefts are not coming off. When you're using a machine, though, just let the machine guide you. Don't force it, don't push it, don't bunch it. If you're doing everything correctly, you got your settings in order, just let the machine work it. Just make sure that you're there, of course, to make sure that the wefts are on the guidelines and that you're sewing symmetrical. Creating a unit on a sewing machine is very easy. I feel like I would much rather construct a unit on a sewing machine versus sewing it with my hands. Of course, when I started making wigs back in 2017, 2018, I was sewing the tracks, by hand. But in 2020, I decided to invest in a brother sewing machine, and I self-taught myself how to make a wig on a sewing machine because I was tired of having to sew down all the wefts, and it from start to finish, y'all, for me to make a wig by hand and fully style it, it took maybe about 2.5, 3 hours. But honestly, now that I make my units on a sewing machine, it takes anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. But I'm showing y'all how the inside of the cap looks very neat, looks very good on the inside. Again, this is why I love to create the units on a sewing machine, because if you sew it down by hand and you open up the wig and look on the inside, it's not really going to be look it's not going to really look aesthetically pleasing. But I mean, you know, I just want to make sure that my wig looks good on the inside just like it looks good on the outside. So I'm just going to be following my guidelines all the way until I get to the top. Just going through and securing these wefts down and making sure I take down the ends very well. Again, when you get to those ends, make sure you backstitch at least 2 to 3 times for sure. Really 4 times, just to make sure that those wefts are not going anywhere. So I'm coming up closer to the top by the closure, and this is where it can kind of get a little bit tricky. When you're sewing, make sure you're turning the cap and making sure that the wefts are on the guidelines to make sure that everything is symmetrical. Now, when you're sewing around, make sure you kind of grab the back of the wig and kind of pull it down just a little bit so it won't be scrunched up as you're sewing at the top. Okay, so I'm showing y'all here that all I have is like a small piece of weft left from the second bundle. So I'm going to show y'all how to connect the new bundle into this so you don't have to waste any hair or put it to the side. So just sew it on regular like you're doing before. Just sew it all the way around. And like I said earlier, we put every single piece of bundle into this wig because we want it thick and we want it extremely full. So every single piece has got to get sewn onto this wig somehow, some way. So I've gotten to the end of that weft. So I'm going to be taking the other weft and I'm going to be lining it up underneath there. I'm going to take it and just push it underneath, and then I'm going to be back stitching 2 to 3 times to make sure that it's secured on there and that it won't come up at all. So then I'm just going to go around and just finish this up and back stitch the 2 3 times when I get to the front after I cut the weft. And another thing, you may experience some shedding after you comb through the wig when it's done, specifically because you're cutting the wefts. Even though you're back stitching, it's still going to be some loose hairs in there. So don't be alarmed if you have like some shedding after you finish making a wig, because again, you're cutting the wefts. And once I get to this part, normally I would cut the fabric out from underneath of the closure just to, because the cap is still intact. I haven't cut the part off yet, so it's giving me some tension a little bit. So to ease that tension up, I'm just going to cut the cap from underneath where the closure is at, just to help me, secure the wig down without having a tussle and fight with it. And again, sometimes it could be a little difficult when you're getting close to the top. You have to curve the wig and make sure the hair is out of the way and sewing down and just making sure you get everything secured. Now, sometimes you may have to go through and clear some of the hair off from underneath, like the needle that could be getting snatched, like when you're trying to turn. But make sure you're following the guidelines and you turn the wig like you see how I'm turning. Every time I hit the curve, I turn. Make sure you're turning the wig, and just to make sure that the wefts are going to lay flat and nothing is buckled or anything. Alright, so now we're finna start on the last track, securing it down. I put my track as close to the end of the closure as possible, just to make sure that it's flush and it's not bulky. I don't ever sew my last weft to my closure piece at all. At all. I just make sure that it's very close to each other, right beside each other, but never on top of each other, because I don't want it to be bulky whenever I'm going to style it, and lay the closure down flat. And also, down the road, if the client or customer requests for a lace closure replacement, you don't want to have the weft sitting on top of the lace. Then you have to cut the weft off, and then it's just too many steps. So just make sure you sew the weft extremely close, but not on the actual outside of the closure. So if you made it this far, I would like to say thank you. Hoping that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't know, my name is Amber. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, but I specialize in custom wig making. My business is Goddess Hair Company, but I have on my Instagram, it's called Wigs by Amber. Like I said, I custom make all of my wigs, and the unit that I'm custom making now is the Jocelyn unit. It's the 5x5 HD lace with three full 20-inch deep curly bundles. So I'm just showing y'all the inside of the wig. Looks very good. Very, very good. Stitched to perfection. Love it, love it, love it. All of my custom units come with an adjustable elastic band that I sew down using the machine as well. I purchased my adjustable elastic bands in bulk on Amazon, as well as my wig caps. So we're all done with constructing the units. As you can tell, the inside of the unit looks extremely good. Like I said, no bunching of the thread. Everything looks uniform, just nice. And this unit is going to lay extremely flat to this client's head, custom made.